Hello, welcome back to Joel Explores Tech. In this video, I'm going to take a look at a copy of Deluxe Paint II that I recently picked up. We'll look at what's included in the box, get it installed on a 486 machine, and run through some of the features. Deluxe Paint was one of the more popular bitmap editors from back in the day. It was first released for the Amiga platform in 1985 and would later be ported to MS-DOS, though only the version 2 and an enhanced version of the version 2 were ever released on the DOS platform. By the time I was using Deluxe Paint in the early 90s, version 4 or even 5 were already released on the Amiga. I used it in probably middle school to early high school age and created a number of early games and things with friends at that time. So I'm excited to go back and explore the application. Deluxe Paint was being used at the time for creation of artwork in many of the games we played back in the day, both larger artwork pieces as well as doing sprite work. It has a lot of powerful tools for pixel editing, and it's very easy to see why it was so popular back in the day. In some games, you can even see the assets directly saved as Deluxe Paint images. For example, here in the Settlers 2. It was very performant at the time, and I even installed it on my AT&T PC6300 XT machine. And it could even be used with drawing tablets at the time, like the Wacom tablet I'm demonstrating here. So let's take a look at the box, get it installed, and start exploring. So I thought we would start by taking a look at the box itself on the outside. This is the 2.0 version. We can see the specs called out for IBM PC, XT, AT, PS2, Tandy 1000, and 640K. It comes with the 3.5 and 5 1/4 discs. Then the iconic King Tut image, the one you always see showcased when talking about Deluxe Paint. This is an image that was included with the application itself and was very impressive at the time, seeing that kind of smooth gradation of the gold, given that it was in 256 colors. Very, very cool for imagery at the time. It is the kind of, DOS big box format. Again, we can see the Electronic Arts, sort of their internal tool that was created for their developers. On the back, we can see some of the features called out. Things like gradient and color fills. You can even fill with textures like this brick, maybe make out in the image here. There's a zoom feature, which was a big deal for the time. Obviously now multiple zoom levels are not a big deal, but was very useful for doing that pixel editing. There's a perspective tool allowing you to warp different images on a perspective plane, and then even text and things could be placed into your designs. We have the manual, fairly substantial here. I'll set that to the side for now. I'll lay it flat in a moment here. We have a pamphlet for different EA games. Looks like mostly sports titles. We do have a few that I've heard of. Skate or Die. I mean, I've heard of most of them, but not many that I was familiar with. On the back, we do have Deluxe Paint 2 Enhanced, marked as coming out in fall of '89 for $129.95. So they're already advertising the advanced version is coming down the road. Let's see, we have a offer to order a video for Deluxe Paint. It would have been a cool way to learn about how to use the program, obviously before the days of YouTube. Manual addendum, looks like printer compatibility, calling out some different updates that were made since the manual was created. And we have our cool EA disc labels for the two 5 1/4 discs. So these would be 360K. And then our 720 double density Deluxe Paint 2 disc. Before we do that install, I wanted to take a quick look at the manual here, just to note a few items. Short bio of Dan Silva, the creator of Deluxe Paint. And then our standard manual, printed in black and white. Goes through most of the features. We do have some screenshots, things like that to showcase different features. But mostly just a whole bunch of text. There's some examples of the fonts that are included. There's our perspective tool, talking about how that warping is working for your 2D images. But definitely would have been very useful back in the day to have the printed manual. I've got the 46 machine set up on the bench and started up. Let's go ahead and take our Deluxe Paint II disc and install. First off, we'll switch to the A drive. I believe it is just install. And I think you need to give it the drive. So I'll let that run and we'll jump to it being installed. So all the files are copied onto the C drive with the installation. We can see a pictures and brushes directory that have some samples that came with the application. A number of font files and some printer drivers. And then there are a couple of utilities, camera and convert. Camera is a pretty cool application that lets you do screenshots with a TSR, so it runs in the background. Just for an example, let's do a quick shot of a game. And then we can load it up in Deluxe Paint. You capture with Alt-C. And then you hear a PC speaker click. So there's a couple shots. Let's get one with ND running at the top. Okay, now let's exit out of the game and go back to Deluxe Paint. So the first thing you'll notice with Deluxe Paint II is this resolution selection screen. It shows all the video modes that Deluxe Paint supports, everything from CGA up to VGA. The 2.0 version only supports up to 640 by 480 with 16 colors, though it does support Hercules, Tandy, and Amstrad as well. The primary mode I used back in the day was the MCGA 320 by 200 256, as that is what most of the games at the time were using and fit pretty well with the game aspirations that me and my friends had growing up. So we would use this mode often. So out of the gate, you can see we have our pretty standard toolbar and file menu across the top that you would be used to in a modern application like Photoshop. If we open up the About Deluxe Paint, we can see Deluxe Paint II by Dan Silva. This is the 1.2 version. The enhanced version, I believe, is version 3.0. We've got our file menu with loading and saving of brushes and stencils and images. Let's quickly just load up an image so we've got some nice background here. Let's go ahead and load that screenshot that we just did. It saves them in the directory where the game was running. And there we go. So we can see the pixel art directly captured in from Indiana Jones. You can see the palette pulled in from that image. So then looking at some of the other options, we have the preferences, things like the info bar across the bottom that can give you more information. Again, similar to what you might see in Photoshop or other applications where you can have coordinates, things like that. Going into the picture menu, we have things for setting your page size. You can have a larger image, like working on a, say, 640 by 480 image in 320 by 200 video mode. Options for stencils, we'll go into those in a bit. Spare page is an interesting option also that we'll go into. Mode are options for how the tools behave. Color would be the tools just putting down a flat color. Smear sort of pushes pixels around.
Shade does sort of like a dodge or burn type effect, like you might see in Photoshop. Cycle will cycle through the palette as you're drawing. And then smooth is sort of a like anti-alias or blur tool. Under brushes, we have a number of options. So first off, what is a brush? A brush is basically a selection of pixels. You can think of it like a sprite. I'll give you a quick example of that with this is the brush tool for making a selection. So for example, obviously it's going to pull in the background as well, since we're just selecting the pixels. But you can see where we've got the sprite. You can see there's sort of the transparency there, and that is because the color in that selection, that black that you can see in his boots, is the currently selected background color. So in the brush, that comes through as a transparent color. If I place it on the black, then you get the same coloring with that black showing through. So the brush options then allow you to manipulate things like flipping X, Y, and Z. So X, horizontal, Y, vertical, Z is for rotation. Pretty powerful, really, especially for back in the day. And then you can do things like shearing and other options. Perspective, we'll get into that in a little bit as well, is pretty cool. Color options and font selection. Just running through some of the tools, we have a selection of your brush size. We've got a sort of a brush that places down based on the rate that you're moving the mouse. So if you go slow, you get a thicker line, and then more sparse as you speed up. We've got the standard full filled in tool. We've got a line tool, an arc tool, we've got that fill, and that's because I had selected the gradient tool there. We have the spray paint brush, which is again going to use whatever the selected color and brush is. We have the tools for drawing shapes. You can either go for a solid or outlined version, depending on where you click. You can see we have the division between the upper left and lower right. This is a kind of a confusing implementation, I think. I believe they changed that in the later version. We can see that fill again is set for whatever we set it in the fill type there. So now if I go back to that solid, we should get the solid. Yeah. Other shapes work the same. We do have an oval where we can draw and then rotate. So if you want to add an angle in an oval shape, and then a n-gon or any polygon shape that you want to define. We have that brush selection again. So I could grab that, mirror it over the X. You can use fonts. One interesting thing to note with the fonts is that they are bitmapped fonts. So they're generally only going to be defined at a couple of font sizes. Let's go with Art Deco maybe. And then you can see the font rendered out there. But you can see that it's only defined at certain sizes. You could scale it, of course, but that's going to give you varying results with the pixels that are available. You know, obviously here we're at 1 pixel, and we're not doing any anti-aliasing. We have a grid mode, which will align things on a grid. Generally that is for the brush placement. So let's say we grab a brush. Actually, it's doing the grid right now. So let's turn off grid, turn this on, do a selection. Now if we turn on the grid, yeah. So now it's locking to a grid, so very helpful if you're making like a sprite sheet or something and you want to have things snap to a grid. And let's clear out. Another tool that was interesting to play with back in the day, though I'm not sure really how useful outside of creating mirrored type patterns, is this, I always called it the snowflake tool, but sort of gives you the option to mirror your drawing around in any number of points, so you can select different numbers and it will mirror that number of times around this circle. So if you were making like a, I don't know, a logo or something that had a mirrored look to it, you could use this tool. We have the zoom tool. Let me just load in a better image to showcase that. It was definitely a great way to learn things about how other artists were doing pixel art in DOS, and then also, of course, working on your own art. We've got a zoom in and out for that zoom mode, and then obviously you can go in and start doing your pixel art. And then finally at the bottom is the color palette filling out the rest of the toolbar, and you can scroll through the 256 color palette. That's another thing to note. The palettes are defined per image, so if you load up two different images, they might have a different palette. So things like copying a particular sprite or piece from one image might look different in the other image, as the colors would be mapped differently. But there's options even for things like that, where let's say you have a character sprite you are copying from one image, you bring it into another image, and you want to keep the original colors. If there's enough palette available in the image you're pasting into, you can tell it to maintain the colors in the brush that you're pasting in. And one of the more powerful features is what they call the spare page. Acts almost like a scratch pad or a second canvas, where you can jump over and work on things, combine brushes, do painting, and then bring those pieces back into your main canvas. So for example, let's say we were, make sure I don't have a color that I'm trying to copy here. We'll try this one, because when you do the selection for the brush, it's going to make anything transparent that is the background. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Jump over, and now we could work on this. You know, remove background colors, do whatever we need. In the separate spare canvas, we could make copies of it, rotate them. You know, do whatever we want to do there, and then bring that back into our main picture. So pretty powerful having that scratch pad. Let's say you wanted to leave the blue colors but edit the yellow areas. In Photoshop, you might do something like a mask layer or a selection. In Deluxe Paint, they have the option of stencils, which allow you to mark certain colors or range of colors. Let's try these blues. Just in case, I'm going to grab these blues. So we would be basically saying, don't change these colors. Make that stencil. And now, let's just for contrast grab a bright color and see So not quite, I didn't get all the blues I was wanting, but you get the idea, where certain blues are not being modified and are being left. So you would need to go in and really get your color selection right. One thing to note that I just realized here, of course, is that you only have one undo level. Definitely a big step from what we're used to in the modern applications. So I definitely remember saving often when working on pixel art. Another very cool feature is the perspective mode. So let's again load in that clean copy of that King Tut image. Let's select it as a brush, maybe just the face here. So now we've selected all the pixels. So let's go over to the spare page where I've got this still. Let's clear this out. Okay, so now if we do insert, that takes us into the perspective mode. You can hit 8 and select sort of your center of the vanishing point. And then from there you can rotate with 1 through 6. 1 and 2 are, looks like, rotating about the x-axis. 3 and 4 are about the y-axis. And then 5 and 6 about the z-axis. So let's get a kind of a more drastic scale here. And then let's turn on the grid. So we have a snap to grid, and then we can start placing our brush. And you get a very cool perspective effect. This would have been very useful if you were making a game or something where you wanted a single screenshot with some perspective effect. Making maybe like a point and click adventure where you had certain areas that had perspective castle walls or something. You could do that sort of effect with this tool. And then I wanted to just do a quick look at the palette, just kind of going more in depth into what that meant for your image. So there is a default palette. Right now we got the King Tut image palette loaded. Let's jump to the default. So this would be the default Deluxe Paint palette. The first 16 colors are the standard colors you would get in 16 color mode, and then ranges above that for 256. You've got your standard RGB HSV sliders, and then setting up ranges of colors. You can select a color. Let's say we wanted like a magenta gradient. You set your first color, and then say we wanted magenta to black. And then you do a spread from the black to the magenta, and there you go. Now you've got that color range. So if you were doing something like a sunset or something else where you've got a fairly set range and you want a very smooth gradient of oranges or yellows, things like that, you could make a much more gradual gradient for the specific colors that you were looking for. And then it has a lot of tools for things like taking the palette from a brush. So again, with that spare page, if you loaded in a separate set of brushes, you could bring in a palette or just a portion of the palette from that brush into your main palette. And then the other cool thing is the cycling. You can see this black line, that's the range that will cycle when you use the color cycling. So if we load up some of their samples, so they've got an animated here. So this is a single image, but when we rotate the palette, you can see we're getting an animated effect. So all of these frames are in this image. They're just drawn in different colors in the palette. And as that palette rotates, the character becomes visible. These bouncing balls, star field rotating. All these can be achieved without any pixels actually being changed, just the color palette definition being changed. So this sort of looks like a daytime scene. It has its own palette defined. If we switch to the default palette, now it looks like a night scene. So again, just changing the palette and you get a variety of effects. And now let's jump over into Deluxe Paint 2 Enhanced. Do a kind of quick comparison between the two. So we can see right off the bat we've got a lot more video options, primarily the enhanced VGA modes, everything from 640 by 400 256 all the way up to 1024 by 768 with 256. Just to give a fair comparison between the two UIs, we'll load up the same resolution. Right off the bat we can see things are quite a bit cleaned up from the previous version. First off, we've got our version is at 3.0 for that enhanced version. They moved the file menu to the picture menu with things primarily around loading and saving the image itself. That spare page option is moved into here. They've added a view full page. Looks like it's capital V. So it gets rid of the UI. See, we've got all our brush options moved in here. I think these are pretty much the same, but I definitely like the way they clean these up. In the tech menu, we have all of those tool options. Those look like they're all the same. We have a dedicated stencil menu now. Font, miscellaneous options, and preferences. Then in the tools, one big change they did was to add a left click and hold. So that cleaned up the menu quite a bit by allowing them to have these sort of pop-out menus with quick select details. I think we have more sizes selectable here, different shaped brushes. On the brush itself, we've got the, okay, so like a single pixel mode, or single placement. So per click, it only does one, which would be nice for pixel editing. Here's that hand tool I was saying. So while you can't do real-time dragging, it does allow you to quickly pan around an image. Let me just load up one that would be good for that. We can see how that hand tool is letting us easily pan around. We have a color picker now. That is very nice. We didn't have that before. At least on the toolbar, there may have been a key or something for doing that. And then the undo, let's see if they've added multiple undos. I assume not. Let's see, so if we draw 1, 2, 3, we've got grid on. Now if we do undo, nope, just the one undo still. But it is a nice option to have. Our gradient is directly selectable now, and then we also have the pattern fill selection. So that's a quick look at the differences. One other difference, if we quit out and launch back in a higher resolution, so if we do say 640 by 480, you get the nicer fonts used in the menus and also some higher resolution on the tools themselves. And then to wrap it up, I thought I would showcase a few images that I had done back in the day. Keep in mind this is middle school, so not the greatest of art, but kind of showcasing what I was doing back in the day. We were going to work on a sort of a fantasy RPG game we were going to call Fantasy Realms. You can see their 1993 date there. This was a prototype I was doing where I was basing the tiles off of what I was seeing in Legend of Zelda on Super Nintendo. I was going to branch off from there. I had an idea for like a spiral life bar, and then visually showing your coins. Again, fairly primitive, but at the time we were in middle school, so we were fairly enamored with all the games we were playing, and wanted to see what we could build. And then just to contrast, I'll show kind of what the pros were up to at the same time at ID Software, as they were using Deluxe Paint as well, and obviously had much better results This is a sprite sheet from Wolfenstein 3D that was done in Deluxe Paint. You can kind of get an idea of how they were lining things up, and probably using the numbering for referencing, you know, when they'd pass files around between people saying, oh, the sprite at, you know, 20, 11 or whatever, to define how to reference different sprites. Definitely very cool being able to see how some of this artwork was done back in the day with such a cool tool for the time. And obviously now we have much more powerful tools with Photoshop, but still I think Deluxe Paint is a great tool for pixel art and can be useful even today. I think that about wraps it up for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Mine. Be on!